Is it safer traveling alone or traveling as a single parent with your kid? Let's think about that for a minute. So traveling with kids comes with its own inherent list of dangers, right? The more there are of you, the higher the chance that somebody's gonna get sick, that somebody's gonna get scared, that somebody's gonna get hurt. It only takes one of you to get food poisoning to trip and skin your knee, for crying to ensue. And obviously, little kids are a lot less safety aware than say another adult. As a parent, you also have to travel with more things: diaper bag, baby wipes, toys, travel with extra allergy meds because maybe you don't have an allergy, but your kid or children do. So I would argue that traveling with a kid comes with inherent nuances, comes with annoyances, comes with hassles, because there's just more you have to plan for. But that's exactly why it's actually safer traveling with your kid than traveling alone, because you're gonna take those extra precautions. You're gonna make sure that the location you're going to is safe enough for you and your kid, that there are safe activities for you and your child to enjoy. And you're gonna make sure that the company you keep, the people you meet, the people you choose to hang out with, the places that you go within a particular city is child approved. And one of the other safety benefits of traveling with a kid is that you almost have to travel slowly. Now, I don't mean you have to stay months and months in a particular location, but I do mean if you're going for, let's say, a weekend to London, if you were going alone or if you were going with friends, you might be super tempted to jam pack that weekend with 20 activities. But any parent knows that kids are a little bit more unpredictable. They're a little bit less likely to go with the flow simply because it's on the schedule. And so you'll have a tendency to go, okay, we're gonna schedule maybe one thing in the morning, maybe one thing in the afternoon or evening, and that's it. Everything else, we're just gonna kind of go with the moment. We're gonna go with the flow. Maybe we do spend half the day just enjoying the hotel room or just enjoying the pool, but not having such a strict schedule also keeps you safe. You're less likely with a relatively relaxed schedule to get overwhelmed and to make rash decisions that could ultimately lead to some level of danger for you and your family. It's just a lot less likely the more calm and level-headed you as the parent are. And so on multiple levels, traveling with kids is safe. And I would argue in terms of the walking at night by yourself versus walking at night with your kid, listen, bad people exist everywhere. People will take opportunity of weaknesses everywhere. But in a lot of my travels, generally when I hear about muggings, when I hear about all of those things that happen, they happen so much more often to either solo travelers or people traveling without children. While again, evil lives everywhere, it's just a lot less common for people to purposely pick on a small child. It's less likely. But you're gonna hear so many more stories of strangers helping a single mom traveling, especially with a young child, than not. Now, Alex is 11, so he's kind of on that cusp of being independent where strangers don't generally help him out too much. But when he was younger, I think people know the struggle of single momdom and they know that it's difficult. And so they'll help you. They'll stand up to let your kid have a seat on the bus. They'll stand up to let you and your kid have a seat on the bus. If your kid is crying in public, strangers will come to entertain your children, whether they attempt to give your child a candy of some sort, whether they just make funny faces and smile and giggle and kind of show them laughter and happiness again. Strangers are so much more considerate towards your child. And then again, perhaps you're getting frustrated because your child is crying. Perhaps you're getting frustrated because of whatever. You will notice the kindness in others just that much more when you're traveling with a kid. Now, I said before that part of the safety of traveling with a kid is that you're gonna make smart decisions. So this is not to say that you should be like, oh, it's absolutely fine to travel with a kid. I can do whatever I want and go wherever I want. No, part of that safety is definitely your planning, you're being prepared and making good choices. But if you're being held back from travel because you're like, I can't leave my kid behind and I need to bring my child, but it's just not safe to travel with a kid, highly disagree. Just like a trip to Walmart is just much more difficult with a kid than going by yourself. Yes, there's certainly elements that make planning an absolute must with children, but assuming that you're gonna be a bigger target because you're traveling with a child, I think that's a huge myth. And not only do you as a single parent tend to plan a little bit more when traveling with a kid, not only are strangers just a little more kind because you're traveling with a kid, but whether you realize it or not, your kid's eyes and ears are a huge asset when traveling. Now, yes, your kids' eyes and ears are also part of the distraction, right? They're gonna notice things that you're not gonna notice, and they're going to possibly divert your attention towards things that are maybe not important at this particular time. But just as when you become a parent, You also coincidentally become a better person. When you're traveling with a child, you become a better traveler. Your child will notice things in your environment that you didn't notice. Now, they may or may not fully understand what they're noticing, but they're going to draw your eyes towards things you naturally don't pay attention to, and that extra paying attention can serve you so well. Now, of course, Alex is now 11 and we've been traveling in Mexico since he was 9. He's possibly older than your child. You perhaps have a toddler. But when children are allowed to observe the world, when they're allowed to vocalize what they observe and kind of share their discovery with you, you will notice things, you will observe your environment more, and there's nothing but benefit to those observations and distractions. And so again, now that Alex is older, I can tell you that Alex absolutely is an extra set of eyes and ears when we're crossing the streets, when we're going into a store, when we're going to a market. In the middle of the night, sometimes Alex will hear sounds that I kind of ignore, that I don't really worry about, and it'll draw my attention to, oh, that is an unusual sound. I wonder what that is. So there's been many times, especially in Merida, where I would look out the window and be like, oh, sometimes it's just wonder, like, wow, there's just random fireworks happening that I didn't notice, and now we get to enjoy some fireworks from our window, which is pretty cool. But there was one time in Merida when he noticed police officers. We lived on the top floor and below us are business buildings. And so there's been a couple of times where police officers or somebody is downstairs investigating, doing things. And while especially at that time I wasn't able to help out in any way, I was able to call my landlady and say, hey, I'm not sure why, but there's police officers on our street specifically looking at our building. And I'm wondering, is this something I need to worry about? Now, in all cases, there wasn't necessarily a safety concern. They certainly weren't worried about us, but on one occasion there turned out to be somebody who was actually needing help below us, and by our calling the landlady, she was able to open doors and give access to the police officers who could then help the person that they saw essentially through a window. And so I would never say that traveling alone is a bad thing. I have traveled without Alex many times, both before Alex was born as well as since. I've had several temporary assignments within the US where Alex couldn't come, and so while Alex was at the sitter, I was enjoying a new location. Highly recommend the Bath, Maine area if you've never been. Beautiful, and I got to enjoy that city a few times without Alex, and so there's a lot of simplicity and ease, especially for a mother, to travel alone without her kids. So I highly recommend traveling alone without your kids, to include going overseas if you're able. And then of course there are times when Alex is actually with his dad, and then I've got that time again to travel or to do the things that I want to do. I am an introvert. Alone time is super important to me, and I think alone travel time is a really great way to get to know you. Sometimes in the hustle and bustle of being mom, we're just a little more distracted, right? And so being able to travel by yourself, being able to wake up when you want to, go to sleep when you want to, eat literally the foods you want to, and not just at restaurants that also have foods your child will like, but literally being able to do whatever you want. There's comfort in that. But there's also danger because you are traveling alone, because you don't have an extra set of eyes and ears, and because sometimes there are activities we like to do when we're not with our kids that we know we cannot do with our kids, and some of those have some inherent dangers with it. And so just keep that in mind, especially as you're doing different activities. This opens a can of worms for perhaps needing to be a little bit more aware of your surroundings, even if you're traveling alone. But if you are afraid to travel, whether it's a short trip or long trip with your kid, I say again, I am a much better person for having become a mother, and my eyes are open to a world that's even that much more beautiful because I'm traveling with my child. There are things I would never do if I were traveling alone, but because I did an activity that I thought my child would enjoy, I got to enjoy that much more of the world. So getting out of your box, traveling with your kid, highly recommend. And if you're afraid that it's not safe, again, do your research beforehand. There are so many places within your home country, within your backyard, and overseas that's truly safe for you to travel alone, and definitely for you to travel with your kids. So don't let that fear stop you. While bad people exist everywhere, trust me, there's so much more good than bad. And if you're interested in Mexico in particular, I would like to highly recommend both Merida and San Cristobal de las Casas as high contenders for safe and fun places to visit. Let me know the places you've traveled around the world with your kid and whether you felt safe in that location or not, and I would love to know if I missed out on any reasons why it is sometimes safer to travel with your kid than without. And one benefit of slow traveling with children is you get the best of both worlds. You get a lot of the safety benefits. I'm choosing places to stay, I'm choosing Airbnbs, I'm choosing hotels, I'm choosing cities, I'm choosing streets that I consider to be super safe for me and my child. And so the safety aspect is always with me as I slow travel. And because I'm slow traveling, I get to know a particular place a little bit more. I get to find my comfort zone. I get to find the people that I trust to either babysit my child, have play dates with my child, give classes to my child, and if your child is of age, your child can literally just stay at home while you go out and enjoy the city alone, such as I'm doing today. So traveling with kids is not all about losing my freedoms because I don't get to do all the things I want to do. As you travel, I think it's easier when you slow travel, but nevertheless, there's almost always a pocket. There's almost always an opportunity for you to do something by yourself as you're traveling with kids. So, do you leave the house by yourself, like without your mom or your sisters?
Yeah, sometimes. Many times.
Often.
Sometimes I walk the dog by myself.
How far do you go? How far would you say you go?
Like a few blocks, and then we've walked a little more than that, like a couple times, but it's usually like a few blocks to a convenience store that's like really close to us. To go to a little convenience store that's like a block away.
It depends. If I had the scooter, I could go anywhere in the city, but if I'm walking, I prefer to stay, I don't know, like in our general neighborhood, so no more than a kilometer.
Is it just because you don't like to walk very far? Is it like a walking thing?
And also because I don't completely feel safe, but also dogs.
Dog.
I've had so many issues with dogs.
We're kind of like in a boxed-in area. I don't usually leave that often unless the dog is refusing to go to the bathroom, and then I just kind of have to walk in different areas.
Have you had any issues? Have you been nervous or worried?
No.
No? Okay.
I haven't had any issues, no.
No. Okay, so, and you broached on it a little bit, but you don't feel safe. Is it just the dogs you don't feel safe with, or what makes you?
I wouldn't feel safe walking in town, like on the outskirts of town by myself.
Okay. And you live kind of on the outskirts of town, so.
I do, only in my close neighborhood.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much.
I feel fine.
Yeah. Does sometimes your mom follow you as you're walking around because she's a hovering mom and you wish she wouldn't?
Yes. That happens often. Yes, very
Yeah.
much.
Where you're theoretically alone, but then you look behind there's a shadow.
And by shadow, I mean a woman like hiding behind a pole.
Yes, I do that really well.